E mihi whānui tēnei ki a koutou, e te mai i tēnei kaupapa i te wānei. Anō reira e raurangatira mā, nau mai, hara mai, tēnā ra koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Maria Baker hau nā uri a hau tu tai tukiro, ko Ngāpui me te rarawa nā iwi, no whakapau, ko pau whakahaere no te rauora. Nau mai, hara mai. It's a grand pleasure and a privilege to spend this morning snapshot hour with you to host our wonderful rangatira Lady Tureiti Moxon, a mokopuna of Ngāti Pāhau Wera, Ngāti Kahungunu me Kai Kahu. We've had the fortune as a Māori organisation to follow in the footsteps of Whaia Tureiti in regards to her transformational and inspiration and vision across the Māori health sector in the very broad range of contributions that she's making to our communities and to our people. She is currently the Managing Director for Te Kōhao Health, which is a stunning Māori organisation situated in the Waikato Tainui, contributing to a broad range of whānau ora, social service, education, justice, and other kaupapa across the rohe. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Tureiti, who's going to present a very important kōrero to us today as we continue as Māori to seek the distant horizons and to achieve the aspirations for our people. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Over to you, Whaia.
Kia ora, Maria. Kia ora koutou katoa, kānui te mi atu ki a koutou I tēnei wā I rungi te kaupapa o te Hauora. Ngā kaupapa nui I wainga nui a tātou a te iwi Māori e naine. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Lovely to be here with you all today and to share a little bit about our journey in the Hauora claim before the Waitangi Tribunal. And I thought it would be interesting for us to have a little bit of a dissect of the health and disability system review from Heather Simpson, and then to talk about what we can hope for from the Kāwanatanga, the new lineup that they've got in Parliament right now. So, high expectations, that's what I say. Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the treaty claims and where we came from in our journey. And as I said, I also want to talk about Heather Simpson's report about the future of Māori going forward and how we should hold our ministers accountable. So those tohu that you see on the side, those are the four PHOs that Māori PHOs that remain today, and they were from originally a set of 14 PHOs. But when PHOs or primary health organisations were mooted, it was a real opportunity for us to be community owned, for us to be driving our own healthcare, but more importantly than that, for us to be able to determine for ourselves what was best for ourselves. Now, that's why they were so important to so many Māori at that time, because we saw this as being transformational. But in actual fact, in the 2000s, if you might remember, there was a deliberate disinvestment in Māori health. And basically, and it has been proven that we were grossly underfunded and under-resourced, and that inequities between Māori and non-Māori health was high. So what's changed, you might be asking? So as we go through this, let's just think about that. So when we come to question time, you might have some things that you might want to ask. But there was no ability for us to exercise our tino rangatiratanga in the design or the delivery of primary healthcare in Aotearoa. And there remains today 30 Māori primary health providers. So we could have had a huge more had we had the resources or the opportunity to exert our own tino rangatiratanga at the time. So in 2005, 2008, we took, between those 3 years, we took a claim to the Waitangi Tribunal. But the tribunal directed us to go and talk with the Ministry of Health and to work out a solution. So for pretty much 3 years, we tried to work on a solution. We had workshops, we had all kinds of things, going backwards and forwards to Wellington, trying to work out a solution, but really nothing happened. And so basically in 2008, we went back to the tribunal. They kept us going on that same path. And then there was a change of government and basically everything stopped. Now, that's why it's important for us to watch this space, but not just to watch, to speak out in this space, because that can happen to us again. It looks like we're going to be getting some real change, but change doesn't come easily. And certainly innovation doesn't come easily, and taking risks doesn't come easily. So between 2005 and 2008, Deloitte were commissioned to investigate the costs of running Māori providers and Māori PHOs. And they estimated that it would cost over 21 million annually, but we were underfunded by 349 million annually. So that's a big number. And we are currently working with the ministry to get some recompense around that, but no one is interested, to be honest. So these are the claimants of the original claim, and they are Timi Maipi. Elaine Tapsell was the CEO of Ngāmatapuna Oranga PHO in Tauranga, and she was replaced by their chair, Janice Cooker. Hakopa Paul started a small PHO in Ngāti Pikiao land in Rotorua, but that didn't last very long. In fact, that grievance still remains today in terms of an apology to them. And then there was us. We ran a collective of primary health carers or services called Toiora here on Kirikiri Marae, in fact. And then National Hauora Coalition came into the picture in 2019 when we took the claim when the claim was heard in 2018 before the Waitangi Tribunal. So that was 14 years later. It's now 15 years later, and we're still haggling over words. So it was a beautiful hearing before the Waitangi Tribunal at Turanga Marae, but you can see 16,000 pages of evidence, 44 witnesses and specialists. And so it just carries on and on and on. So this is nothing new to most of us who are attending today, this webinar. But the tribunal did come out with some really strong statements around Māori experience in terms of inequities and the fact that it's linked to colonisation and that it's a breach of the treaty compact, and that the colonisation in New Zealand is ongoing, and it manifests itself in institutional racism. Now, while lots of people wonder, how that happens because they don't really believe that they are one of those people, someone coined the phrase that it's an action in the face of need. And there has been an action in the face of need for a very long time now, and it carries on decades and decades and decades later. So, on average, now, everyone will know this. I'm not telling you anything you probably aren't aware, but we still have the poorest health status of any ethnicity in this country, that we are twice as likely to die from preventable diseases, that we are twice as likely to face discrimination in health, and we are less likely to be referred to for diagnostic tests. So I attended the asthma conference in Wellington just recently, so I thought I'd put a few of these up as well, because they're high stats, and particularly with the rates of Māori and Pacifica peoples, you know, 3 and 4 times higher than other ethnicities. And the admissions into hospital, again, 3 times higher than everybody else. And so on it goes, and it doesn't stop there. So hospitalizations 2.5 times higher, and that's both for Pacifica as well, and just under 2.5 times higher for deprived households. But the issues that we have is that we are dying needlessly, and cardiovascular disease mortality, you know, 2.5 times higher than non-Māori, stroke mortality, twice as high, heart failure 3 times as high, and from all the cancers, twice as high. But women, Māori women, for lung cancer mortality is 5 times higher. Now that's a huge inequity. And for our Māori men, it's 3 times higher. So all of these things actually impact on us as a people, on us as a culture, on our reo, on our tikanga, on our whakapapa. So the tribunal came up with, these principles, but they're not the principles that just came out of the sky. They have been principles that have been developed over many different treaty claims. But the one thing they say is that the Tureiti guaranteed us tino rangatiratanga. It guaranteed us that. So it's not a gift from the Crown that our tino rangatiratanga is something that may be realised or may not be. But the 3 Ps basically were outdated, and there's a principle of partnership, active protection, equity, and the principle of options. And that's the thing that we need more to look at more closely as to what it is and how we see that this should be playing out with this new government. So basically, as I've said earlier, the Crown failed to abide by its obligations. And interestingly enough, when Ashley Bloomfield was giving his evidence before the Waitangi Tribunal, it's before he became famous, he was saying that the ministry was run down so badly to the point that they'd lost its confidence, and that a lot of the people who had the institutional knowledge had left or had been moved on and whatnot. And so they really got to a point where they weren't able to actually do the kind of things that they wanted to do, or they felt undermined and felt that they just were too afraid to do anything. So they did nothing. So basically, the tribunal said that they cannot continue to evade their obligations, and that health inequities experienced by Māori compel an urgent and thorough intervention. The tribunal also recommended an overall, recommended that the Crown acknowledge their overall failure, and that the New Zealand primary health care system should be improved for better health outcomes. So, Māori face discrimination in mainstream clinics, but some of the positive things that they did say, the tribunal, was we do important work, we give Māori patients quality healthcare, and are the best at what we do. We face underfunding and prejudice, and tino rangatiratanga Māori Mane Motahake requires Māori communities, or giving back to Māori communities, control of their own health. That's what we want, isn't it? So the recommendations from the tribunal were to amend the treaty and equity clauses, and lots of people are talking about that right now, but whether or not they actually understand and know how to implement that is something yet to be seen. To develop terms of reference for Māori Health Authority, and to agree on a methodology for the underfunding, which we are working through at the moment. And when I say we, the claimants. So review and strengthen accountability mechanisms and monitoring, co-design the Māori primary care research agenda, and reinstate Māori health plans. Yeah. That's an interesting one itself, and to redesign partnership mechanisms at all levels. So, off the back of the Waitangi Tribunal came the Health and Disability Systems Review led by Heather Simpson. So basically, they were saying the same things as the Waitangi Tribunal were saying in terms of our health situation in this country, and the fact that we do important work, etc., etc. But it was interesting that it was the minority report that prevailed over the majority of the panels. So, Simpson report recommended that Māori Health Authority should sit within a new entity, the New Zealand Health Entity. Notwithstanding, basically, it's not a standalone body. It's controlled by the Crown. It's relegated to a policy and advisory level. They have no decision-making powers and no allocated funding. It continued to go on that the New Zealand Health New Zealand should be 50-50 Māori in the Crown, and that should implement Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Interesting, because in all the years that we have been around, no one within any Pākehā ministry has ever been able to implement Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So improving the well-being of disabled people, workforce development, digital and data development, and that all DHB members should be appointed by the Minister of Health. So these are the majority alternative review panel, and basically they did not reach consensus on the Māori commissioning. Their view was that there should be Māori commissioning. Their view that the New Zealand Health or the ministry should be committed to transformational vision for the future and practical expression of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It's very difficult to give practical expression to Te Tiriti o Waitangi when you don't understand what it means. And the majority of those in leadership positions in this country do not understand what it means. And then they supported the universal approach, not working for Māori. So they provided an alternate view, and that alternate view was supported by the Māori Expert Advisory Group, and that was led by Sharon Shea, if some of you may recall that. Anyway, the role of the Māori Health Authority was to include commissioning, as I said earlier, and funding control was necessary. Workforce development programs were necessary, and provider development programs should continue and actually should be even better. Managing innovation funds should be implemented, and they supported Tino Rangatiratanga and Māori Mana Motahake. So all of these things were put in as part of the Simpson report, And interestingly enough, we met with the transitional unit yesterday, the claimants, led by Stephen Cooney. And they are actually working through the report. And we were asked if we supported the alternative view. And of course we do support the alternative view. The issue, of course, is whether or not we're going to be able to implement any of this and whether or not there is a real will on behalf of the Kāwanatanga or ministers to actually do it. Now, you may remember that in the policy of policies by Labour prior to getting in, they actually said they supported a Māori authority. Minister, the Associate Minister of Health, Penny Henare, also said that he supports a minister, a standalone, well, he was very keen to be the Minister of Health, but obviously that didn't happen. But also he supported a standalone Māori Health Authority. But again, the question is, of course, what does that look like going forward? So, the future for Māori from our perspective is that we need and we require and we must demand transformational change, because inequities and institutional and personal racism is never going to change, not in a million years, because there's far too many of the majority population who really are disconnected from their own culture and so have no understanding whatsoever about what it means to be estranged from your own culture in our own country. So the future for us has to be tino rangatiratanga and Māori mana motuhake. And what we're looking for is a partnership of equals under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Now that, when I say equals, it's power sharing, resources, funding, and decision making. So it's very important that we are clear about what a partnership means. A partnership does not mean what we have currently, which is a master-servant relationship. A partnership is a master-master relationship, whereby we have equity, equality, and equal standing in what we do as Māori in our country. Because for too long, it's gone on that we are divided and ruled, that we have some iwi doing better than other iwi, some who have better relationships with the Crown and maybe get a little bit more peanuts. But what we're looking for here is an authority that is funded and protected by legislation, which is run by Māori, for Māori, with Māori. And if we settle for anything less than that, I'm afraid we're not going to get very far going forward, and you can bet your bottom dollar we're still going to be faced with the same issues that we're faced with now another 30 years from now. So, you know, our view is kia tātou anō te aratika. The solutions lie within ourselves. That's what that is. They lie within ourselves. And we have the answers for what's right for us going forward into the future. So let's talk about the new Minister of Health, the Honourable Andrew Little. Well, it'll be interesting because he has had a lot of experience as the Minister of Treaty Negotiations. But it's interesting, isn't it, though, that in the past, Māori have generally done better under national in terms of treaty settlements, in terms of innovation being born out of our moemoeā, like kohanga reo, like kura kaupapa, like wānanga, te wānanga. All of those things were born out of national and not Labour. So it'll be interesting to see what he is made of. Now, somebody whom I hold, as a leader in this country, actually said that Andrew Little is a good man and will do a good job, he thought. But again, it's a maze. It's a huge maze of inequity, the health arena, as well we know. And for someone to be able to turn that around, they would need to be brave and courageous to allow Māori to do what we need to do for ourselves. So that's Mr. Little. Then you've got Penny Henare, who's the Minister for Whānau, and also the Associate Minister of Health. And I actually thought I heard, and maybe I'm wrong because it doesn't seem like anyone else is saying it, I thought that when the Prime Minister announced her lineup, she said that Penny Henare was going to be the Minister for Māori Health. But no one seems to have heard that. So now they're saying, oh, he's the Minister, or perhaps he is the Minister for who has responsibility for Māori Health. So I'm not sure what that actually means in real terms, to be honest. But he has said, as I said earlier, that he is keen for a standalone Māori Health Authority. Well, maybe not standalone, but certainly a Māori Health Authority. And then, of course, we've got Kelvin Davis. Now, I bring Kelvin Davis into the picture because as the Minister for Māori Relations and the Minister for Children in particular, and there's also corrections because a lot needs to be done in that arena. And as the Minister of Education, those are probably the things that we should be looking at and focusing on going forward into the future to bring about transformational change. But he's already said in interviews that he does not support a standalone mokopuna authority. So if he doesn't support that, and Brian Roach, who was one of the minority panelists alongside of Heather Simpson, doesn't believe that we'll ever get this across the line, we have to do something that makes sure that we are in their ear and that we are making something happen. Because to be honest, it isn't going to happen without all of us saying the same thing in the same way and being in the same waka and rowing in the same direction. So with that in mind, a challenge for all of us going forward. So we cannot afford to be complacent. So here's our beautiful Princess Tupuia, who was a visionary in her own right, who is saying, mehe mea ka moemoea ahau, ko aua nake. Mehe mea ka moemoea tātou, ka taia e tātou. So, folks, tātou katoa. Let's be brave, let's be courageous, and let's stand up for what we believe is right for ourselves. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe whaia Tureiti mō tō kororo, o te kaha, tō aroha, o nā whānau kia ora, and tēnā koe, thank you. I always enjoy your contributions and your kororo, and I'm just, I'm hoping that you're okay with us asking just a few questions, if that's okay. I know there's some coming through the Q&A in the chat box at the minute. But before we do, I'm kind of curious, Whaia. It's been a long journey. I didn't realise the whawhai and the journey with this previous to Y2575 has been that long. Can you talk to us a little bit? You've come with the expertise and knowledge of the legal space and needed to take this as an ope to the Waitangi Tribunal because the breaches of the treaty placed this health claim in their remit. Can you tell us, as an advocate for our people, Can you give us some tips about what's really important to stay in this space, to advocate what's really important going forward, and to understand the systems and how to use those? Can you give us any insights from your experience?
Well, I actually got involved with the Māori, with the Waitangi Tribunal because of our own treaty claims, our own historic claims. And the one thing that the tribunal does do, which no other court in this country does, it actually holds the Crown accountable under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Now, some people are saying we should go to human rights this, and we should do this, and we should do that, we should take them to court. In actual fact, those areas are very, they're open to all of us, except for the fact that they're very, very expensive. And so because they're very expensive, the Waitangi Tribunal, while people say that it doesn't have a lot of teeth, the thing is that we come out with a report. And that report usually, in the historical claims, gives a history of who we are for generations to come. It actually provides us with a flagpole, if you like, of where a po of where we've been and where we want to go. And it shows the fact that we have been fighting, not just now, not even since 2005, fighting every step of the way to get the small gains that we have. So that's the Waitangi Tribunal. But it is very important that we understand and know what legislation does to us, because it actually relegates us to being something far less than what it should. And it's quite historically racist. And you might remember, and maybe you don't, but just before Helen Clark left Parliament, when National came in, back in 2008, I think it was, she actually started to pull all the references to the Tiriti o Waitangi in all legislation. And any new legislation that came out, she kept pulling that back. Now, when I was asked by the chair, chair of the Waitangi Tribunal, when we, the Judge Stephen Clark, why the tribunal? And I said, well, we had to hang our hat on something, because really speaking, the kinds of legislation that comes out in Oranga Tamariki is rife with the kinds of things that are so anti-Māori that it's just not funny. And the worst of it is, and we've all been examining ourselves, why did we let it get to that point where it was before we started to challenge? And that's the thing you have to think about in terms of the health space as well, is that we were all very busy doing our treaty claims, our historic claims. So we let go of the ball. And we need eyes and ears everywhere.
Kia ora whaia. You talked about, and just as you're sort of reflecting about the treaty claims, and many of us that are sitting potentially in the space at the minute, also familiar with, having to bring about what's right for our people. Some of the key kōrero that came out of your conversation this morning, Whaia, were a number of things, and I hope you don't mind me just kind of touching base on just a few of them. It was really interesting and great to see that the 3 Ps from the treaty have been retired somewhat, and they added equity and options. And as a result, perhaps, I'm curious if you thought this as well. As a result of the findings out of the Y2575, there is nothing but equity in the conversation around anti-racism across New Zealand's health system at the minute. I think possibly in the last 2 years, roughly, and there's these stunning new positions, Māori and leadership roles across equity portfolios and things like that. I just wondered if you had a view of what you're seeing now as attempts to embed the resources to address equity and to look at anti-racism in the health system. I wonder if you had a view about that.
Yes, I think it's about time that happened, and I certainly think that that the tribunal recommendations and the tribunal report, as well as all the different leaders speaking out, has actually pushed it forward onto the agenda. And I'm so pleased about it, because I actually think that change, it had to happen, because I can tell you this, because when we first went before the cabinet, they had discussed whether or not they were going to have a standalone Māori authority. And basically, the New Zealand First weren't in favour of that, and they redacted the minutes, like almost to the point where you couldn't even see what was going on. You know, you couldn't even follow the conversation. We've had that since go through the ombudsman, and we've been able to see a bit more. But still, the thing about that is they have moved. That's the point I'm trying to make. They have moved from where, no, this is never going to fly, it's never going to happen. And then now they're starting to move that whole equity corridor, that whole injustice, that whole, all of those things, they're moving. So that's been a brilliant thing. And that's been the message, the key message from government to all the DHBs is the equity corridor. But the thing for us now is, how do you implement options, giving our people the option to look after our own health in our own way? Now, that's where they'll probably come unstuck. But that's what we need to be thinking about in terms of working with government officials, working with people, and we also need to be calling it out when it happens. Call it out, name it, because people need to understand that their attitudes sometimes and what they say in public places, that, you know, there's the Trumpism that's going on as well, and people think they can say what they want when they want. But, well, can we? Yeah.
Build a fire. A couple of things have just popped up. It's stunning to hear that the claimants are still driving the advice and the guidance to the Crown on the Māori Health Authority. So it's great to hear that recently yourselves have met with those in the transitional unit. So for those of the whānau that are watching this, there is a piece of work underway by Stephen McKernan, who has been appointed in regards to health reforms, which will be informed by the Simpson report, the Way 2575, and other reports, no doubt. Fire, I'm curious about your aspirations for the Māori Health Authority. You've been very vocal about the need on behalf of many. What do you imagine the Māori Health Authority to look like? Where might it be positioned?
Well, I see it as a central body, but the work is best done at a regional level by those in our communities. So the idea of a authority is that the money, they bring the money in, because every minister has to fight for their budget every year, and billions of dollars, you know, go into health, and we are not even getting, what are we getting, 0.0%, you know, billions of dollars. So we need a ropu who can pull that stuff together and support us getting a really good, with the minister, a really good portion or a slice of that cake. And so I see that that's definitely something that needs to happen. Now, we've got some good, and they should be more like a commissioning agency. So we've got some good examples of that. You've got the Whānau Commissioning Agency. Some people love it. I am one of those. Other people think that they're too big, or they think that everybody's got an idea. Usually it's people are negative towards it because they're not part of it yet. So let's pray and hope that there will be a place for them in the future. But that will depend on whether or not we can bring funding across from all the different ministries. Whānau, for example, the commissioning agency has received some funding, some funding from Oranga Tamariki and ACC. So we need more of that funding coming in. So they would be that group of people. And then their funding will be spread out amongst, now we've already got providers there. So it's got to be, those who, it's got to be a exercise or an agreement of those who are willing to participate, because not everybody wants to participate in everything. But I see that, and that can be made up of iwi, that can be made up of, whomever people choose. And people say, well, who's the who? And we will know that. Let's just get this across the line. We will know that in time. It will manifest itself in time. And those who are really keen to be on it, I'm sure will end up on it. But from my perspective, what we want to do is get it across the line, because once we get it across the line, then it will open up to everybody, and everybody will have that opportunity to participate in what goes on going forward.
Kia ora, Whaia. And so certainly the Whānau commissioning is a wonderful model that can contribute to also forming what the Māori Health Authority could possibly look like going forward. I've got a couple of questions. I've got one from Awhina, who sends you a big mihi for your kaha. She's just asking, with a by Māori for Māori for everyone kōrero, she's querying, and I'm probably thinking I know the answer to this, but does it mean that we close the door to diversity, or in order to get the best for us?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's complementary too.
Aye.
I think because quite often people think it's an either or, but it's an and and an and and an and.
Sure is.
Love it.
Aye, very much so. And we saw that particularly during COVID, didn't we, Whaia, when many of the Māori organisations looked after everybody within their communities, doing what's, manaaki, awhi, aroha, tautoko, all the things that are really important to us. We've got another question here, and I think it's in relation to you sharing about the experiences of the previous political parties, and we've been great to see the diversity in the current government at the moment, but there's a question about Māori Party and where you think that they might be in the political landscape in regards to this kōrero, particularly around Māori health going forward, what your thoughts are around that.
Well, I'm absolutely stoked. We have two in. Absolutely stoked. It actually astounds me how often we talk about what's wrong with us, right? But when it comes to voting with our feet, we tend to stick to the same old things all the time. And I'm absolutely astounded by it. And when I say to people, or challenge people, vote for yourself, they absolutely believe that the Labour Party or the National Party or New Zealand First are about us. Actually, it's not about us. It's not about us. They might look like us. They might feel like us. But in the end, they follow the policies of their government. They follow the policies of their party. And I've got to say, a lot of what the Māori Party is saying now is what we've been saying all along. If you really want true partnership in this country, or a relationship of master-master, then you won't get it under the current governments. You will never get it. And as much as we want to dress that up and say, well, we got all these wonderful Māoris in there, they have another master, and that master isn't you and me.
Aye, kia ora whaia. Just as we're starting to go wrap up towards the end, we've got a lot of really positive affirmations coming through the chat line. People just saying tautoko, your kōrero, and agree in the number of items that you've raised, Whaia. One of the things that you talked about was holding the ministers accountable, and you raised, and I think if anything, try to motivate them in a way that they need to be brave and courageous about the decisions that they contribute going forward with some very hefty portfolios, particularly with the three gentlemen that you talked against this morning. And I guess I'm curious about what it is that we can do to help them, because those portfolios are reasonably complex. And given, particularly with those three gentlemen, all the portfolios that they're covering, unfortunately, consist of all the determinants that are also contributing to our situation with our health status. So I'm wondering about what it is that you think they may need from some participants that are sitting here listening, because at the end of the day, that you are the experts. We're working in the health of the social service sector, and I guess at the end of the day, to inform the decisions that need to have happen going forward for, be it a Māori Health Authority and improvement around Māori wellbeing, what do you think that we could do as Whaia, for those of us that are working in the sector, to assist these ministers with supporting them with a way forward for a future that we all desire? What are your thoughts? What could we do?
Well, I think we need to make it known that this is what we think, and this is what we need as Māori, and that inequities, look, everybody's getting to the point now when, I mean, there are people who don't believe in inequities are there, but on the whole, we just need to keep in front of them all the time. But we need to be saying it. So every opportunity that we can say it, we should be saying it. And what we want to avoid and need to avoid is being undermined and to a point where it becomes divide and rule. Because we don't all think the same, it's a fact. We don't all believe in the same things, that's a fact. But the thing is, what we want for ourselves has to be at the top of that. So to protect our whakapapa, if we understand and know that, to protect our whakapapa, those are good principles to live by. But in health, our whakapapa is not protected because we're dying like flies all over the place. So what are we doing? So what we need to be doing is we need to be saying these things. We need to be writing to the ministers. We need to be getting in front of them. We need to be saying, when they come out and they come and visit your rohe and wherever you are, you know, the best time that you ever see them is before an election. But anyway, prior to that, drum it up. Because if we're not heard, it will go back to the same. And that's where we are at the moment. We're in the same. Things are being twinked. But, you know, you got to remember that the system is broken. And no amount of browning it up and twinking the edges is going to fix that. So in order for us to look after ourselves and determine our own future, we have to be brave too. And we have to get on that udder and make it happen for ourselves.
What a lovely way to finish. And just as we still have the beautiful Whaitapuia Herangi, I'm kind of curious about if she could see what was happening now, what would her vision be? What do you think she would have preferred? I'm you know, mindful of that she wanted to see the Māori hospital. There were numbers of things that she wanted to see have happen for her people there at Tūranga Waiwai. If we think about the inspiration that she left all of us, what do you think she would like to see, you know, in our lifetime actually occur? What do you think that she would have loved to see, to know that it happened?
Kia ora. What she wanted was the best for her people. That's what drove her in every way. So, you know, we think about primary health. Well, that's number one. That's the first cab off the rank, right? Then we go to the next thing. We build hospitals. We build X-ray diagnostic centres. We do these things for ourselves. We are not just participants who are just watching what's going on in front of us. We are participants who are actively involved in what we're doing, what we want for our own selves and for our own people. That's what she would want, and that's what we all want. And we must dream that dream, because if we don't dream that dream, we're going to be still in the same situation 20 years from now. So let's just get on the bandwagon, get in the waka, and row in the same direction. Because it's not just health, right? You got the Mokopuna Authority, you've got MSD, because a lot of pressure's been putting on there, but nothing's moving right now. And then you've got corrections, you've got police, you've got everything. We need to change the dynamic and change it around so that we are in control of what happens to us.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you, Whai. Tēnā koe, Lady Tureiti mō tō kōrero i tēnei wā. It's been a great pleasure, and I know that the kōrero that has been received by many this morning, by yourself, people are inspired. The chat comments are coming through thick and fast. Just to say thank you, Whai, as always, and thank you for being the inspiration that you are for all of us, and continuing the fight for us on behalf of all of our communities. We wish you all the very best, and we look forward to what's next on the hikoi as well. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Tēnā rā koutou. It's been lovely for all of you to join us today, and hope that this beautiful kōrero and the finishing off of the moi moi ia of Te Puia Hirangi has also made your day, and also helped you in your journey wherever you may be, to give you further inspiration for the future that we all wish to acquire. So kia ora koutou, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.